Hello, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube live stream event. My name is Camden Mack. I am the Program Events Coordinator and Youth Advisory Board Coach here at the National Girls Collaborative Project. We will be getting started in a few minutes. Our extraordinary panelists will be discussing with us the impact of artificial intelligence on society. But before we dive in, a few quick logistics. Closed caption is available at the bottom of your screen if you need it. Use the comments to ask or share your thoughts during the presentation. We will ask your questions during the audience Q&A portions of tonight's event. And in case this is your first time joining us for a National Girls Collaborative event, I wanted to share a little background on who we are and what we do before we meet our speakers. NGCP is a national network of diverse stakeholders who are advancing the agenda in gender equity. Say that 3 times. We bring together organizations that are committed to informing and encouraging girls to consider STEM. Our vision is to support and create STEM experiences that are as diverse as the world we live in. NGCP believes STEM skills can be acquired by anyone and fostered in everyone. Our initiatives build confidence and create a community of lifelong STEM advocates. Our goals are to, first, build and sustain a network of advocates to provide equitable and inclusive STEM opportunities. Second, catalyze equity in STEM from research to practice by providing actionable knowledge that transform the STEM experience. And lastly, increase our collective impact by strengthening organizational effectiveness. You can learn more about our mission and goals on our website, ngcproject.org. The National Girls Collaborative Project engages in many activities virtually and nationally, as well as through local collaboratives. So let me share a few of them, and we'll put the links in the chat if you would like to learn more about them. NGCP partners with organizations to scale and deliver content such as the Leap into Science National Network, in partnership with the Franklin Institute and the Million Girls Moonshot, in partnership with the STEM Next and Mont After School state networks, serving hundreds of educators via local networks. Working with the Lighter Hill Philanthropies, NGCP manages the If Then Collection, a digital library housing photos, videos, and other media of women in STEM fields. Locally, State Collaborative Leadership offers sessions providing professional development, mini grants for innovative projects when funding is available, and more. NGCP also hosts the Youth Advisory Board. The Youth Advisory Board helps to review and provide feedback on current National Girls Collaborative Project initiatives and assist in informing the future direction of the NGCP. We'll put a link in the chat so that you know how you can stay up to date with NGCP activities and events by signing up for our monthly newsletter. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Melissa, a Youth Advisory Board Junior Chair. Melissa is a first-generation American, born and raised in Ruston, Louisiana. At school, she is involved in Future Business Leaders of America, speech and debate, student council, and the swim team. She is classically actress, small business owner, and volunteer. As a STEM lover herself, she chose to advocate for STEM when she was selected as the A.E. Phillips Laboratory School 5th grade student of the year. 3 years later, she chose to focus on it again when she represented AEP as its 8th grade student of the year. She then went on to win the Lincoln Parish Region 1 and ultimately the Louisiana Middle School Student of the Year. Melissa is now a sophomore in high school and is making great contributions to the Youth Advisory Board. Melissa, I will turn it over to you. Now you can kick off our town hall by introducing yourself and the speakers who are joining us tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa, as Candid said. So I hope you're all having a great evening and are really excited to hang out with us for a little bit. So I wanted to start off by asking a couple questions. So feel free to type those in the comments. We would love to be able to see your responses. So the first question is type yes or no in the comments if you use AI. Okay, and the next question is type in the comments yes or no if you feel AI will benefit the future. Type in the comments one thing that worries you the most about AI. And last but not least, what do you want to learn from today's discussion? I think that's the most important one, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Oh, I see so many comments. Hi, everyone. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I see a lot of yeses. That's great. So, thank you everyone for sharing your answers in the chat. And now let's get our town hall started. Okay, so our moderator and guest panelists are now going to be introduced by me. So, our moderator today is Sandra. Sandra serves as the YAB co chair. From competing at the USA Co Platinum Division to conducting research on high performance computing to being a national finalist in the Air Force Association sponsored Cyber Patriot competition, she has pursued her passions for computer science in a myriad of ways. However, she believes that the field of computer science is limited by its lack of diversity, which is why she works to bring a CS education to those around her in her community. Partnering with Tech Bridge Girls to found Indiana's very first chapter, she teaches young girls to code, build, and engineer and ignites their passions for the STEM field. Everyone, give it up for Sandra. All right. So, our first panelist that I'm going to introduce is Dr. Lalita Krishnamurthy. She is a visionary leader and technology entrepreneur, serving as the co founder and chief executive officer of Open Source Professional Network, a pioneering open teams company dedicated to promoting open source software and fostering collaboration within the global tech community. Under her leadership, Open Source Network has emerged as a vital link in the open source ecosystem, facilitating sustainable funding, recognition, collaboration, transparency, inclusivity, and growth from countless open source developers by connecting them with companies that depend on these projects. Lolita's journey into the world of technology began with a strong foundation in computer science and a passion for innovation. Lolita holds a doctorate in neurosymbolic artificial intelligence, holds several invention patents, is an author, speaker at industry conferences, is on the advisory board of directors for many startups, and a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion in technology. Everyone give it up for Dr. Lalita Krishnamurthy. Okay, moving on, our second panelist for tonight is Ms. Aura Tanner. Aura Tanner is the CEO of Black Unicorn Education, an emerging technology company offering tech education to individuals from diverse communities through unique learning programs, products, and community based events. Black Unicorn Education is on a mission to train 1 million Black builders to become AI leaders in their jobs and businesses, in their communities, and within the industry. The company had its beginning on TikTok and Facebook, where our educational content about AI received tens of thousands of viewers. Today, Black Unicorn has expanded our unique program offerings to include AI office hours, a professional development training series provided through partnership with the Entrepreneurship Collaborative Center in Tampa Bay, Summer of AI, an AI summer camp for underserved middle school students provided through partnership with Hillsborough Community College, virtual and in person workshops, an online tech news series called Saturday Night Tech, and an AI Expert Academy, an exclusive 4-week virtual coaching program that uses a signature framework to teach participants AI strategies, concepts, and tools. Everyone give it up for Miss Aura Tanner. All right, our third and final panelist for tonight is Neha Shukla. She is an 18-year-old serial inventor, social entrepreneur, best-selling author, and ethicist passionate about developing technology to create positive change. She is the inventor of 6 Feet Apart, a wearable social distance device using ultrasonic technology to save lives amid the COVID-19 pandemic. She also delivered the PA Homeless Guide app to combat homelessness through policy change, interned with NASA to develop Earth orbiting satellites to protect environmental vulnerable regions, and developed an AI algorithm for disability inclusion with NVIDIA's sponsorship. Neha runs global STEM, community impact, and climate innovation workshops to inspire the next generation of youth problem solvers. Through 3 years of youth outreach, Neha has reached over 70,000 students across 35 plus countries. Neha released her best selling debut book, Innovation for Everyone, Solving Real World Problems with STEM to further encourage youth innovation. Everyone give it up for Neha Shukla. Aren't our panelists all just so beautiful and so intelligent and so accomplished? I agree with myself, and I hope you do too. Okay, so I am going to turn it over to Sandra, our moderator.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. That was awesome. Thank you so much for the introductions. And let's jump right into the panel Q&A. So I'm going to start off by asking a question directed towards first Lolita, and then hopefully you can popcorn that over to Aura. So Lolita, today there's a lot of conflict over disagreeing values between existing human cultures. So I'm sure like we all can see examples of our disagreements in the news, in our government. But if we can't even agree among ourselves, how can we teach a machine to universally act in our best interests? And personally, which values do you think are most important to embed in AI?
Thank you, Sandra. And thanks to NGCP and the Youth Advisory Board for having me today. So I'm very excited to be here and share with you what I know. For your question, right, I think there are certain things that AI, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, deep networks, there's just various terminologies now that are floating around when people talk about AI. And it's a little bit tricky, right? How do they differentiate each of those nuances? What does each one mean? And my opinion here is that there are going to be some very basic human qualities that a machine's never going to understand. Things around emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, teamwork, collaboration, things like that, right? And decision making. A lot of that as humans are not going to be easily, transferable and teachable to a machine. So I think there are going to be things that machine learning and AI is going to pull forward. And there's going to be certain core things that we as humans have trained, generations over generations and do it so well, whether it's for leading things or for creating things. That kind of like things around empathy and teamwork and things like that are going to be the tough ones that it's going to be very difficult to teach a machine to be able to emulate that.
Can I just follow up with then what qualities do you think are capable of being embedded or taught to a machine?
There are certain things that they're going to be, for example, the vast amount of knowledge and data that needs to be processed just because of because of all this data impact and explosion that we have. It's going to be humanly impossible for us to process that kind of data so quick in order to understand what the data is saying, the patterns in the data, and being able to arrive at least a set of this is what the pattern's saying, and then the human can decide how they want to act on it. So things around automation, things that we manually spend a lot of time doing, those things can absolutely be taught to a machine to automate, whether that is in technology development, software development, or it is in health tech, in healthcare, where there are a lot of tasks, like menial tasks that can be automated. So people can actually focus on outcomes and how they're going to use that. So same thing in the financial industry, same thing in ed tech. So all of the different domains, we're seeing areas like automation that can be teachable, and you can teach that to a machine and program. You can absolutely do that for, predictive things where it's able to process vast amount of data, the veracity of the data, the volume of the data, and be able to give us some insights and some inferences that can help us accelerate the pace at which we want to make decisions, whether that's a business transformation or a digital transformation.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to now pose that same question to Aura.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to your audience about this important topic of AI and its impacts, which is one of my passions, what I love talking about. But as far as you were talking about teaching a machine to universally act in the best interest of humans, I totally agree with Lolita. There are certain things that AI is best at, and those are things that are rote, mundane, repetitive. For instance, yesterday, Amazon, they just started using their first humanoid AI-powered robots at their warehouses. So they kind of look like people, they have hands, but what they're starting off doing is picking up the baskets. The people put all the different, boxes and things like that. And it's these humanoid robots' job to collect the empty baskets and then take them to where they're supposed to go. So that's a great job for AI, because we probably don't want to waste our time having to do that. But as far as values are something that are formed inside of us humans because of, how we were raised, neighborhoods we grew up in, some religion, things like that. Those all shape. So I don't know that you could teach things like character, integrity, dependability, things like that. And if it were possible, we would be seeing that now. So for instance, there are certain things that AI has been trained to do, and there's certain types of content that it's not supposed to return, if you give it a prompt, but there's ways of tricking it to give you bad outcomes. If it really had values, if it were really, like us human beings, it would stop and be like, hey, this isn't a good idea. I shouldn't return these results, but that's not the case. And as far as values, that should be embedded. Definitely like integrity, truthfulness. So we should be able to depend that what you're saying is true. We can rely on what you're saying. And we know that's not the case because right now AI has what's called AI hallucinations. When it doesn't know, can't make the prediction or doesn't know the answers to what you're asking it, it just makes stuff up. And it's just doesn't make sense. Some of it is nonsensical and some of it is just like not true at all. So I think, like Lolita said, humans need to keep doing those things. The empathy, the communication, understanding context, making moral decisions, and then leave the number crunching and the statistical analysis and the computing and the other rote mundane things to AI.
Okay, thank you so much, Aura. I'm going to pose my next question to Neha. So, Neha, okay, in which fields and sectors do you think AI automation has the most potential to have a significant impact, whether that impact be positive or negative? And say 100 years from now, like in your wildest dreams, if we harness AI 100% effectively, what do you think is the most important or innovative thing that humanity is going to be able to achieve?
Those are great questions. Thank you so much. In terms of the first question, which is what are the areas for greatest net impact, whether positive or negative? I can just address both sides of that really quickly. In terms of positive, a lot of people, conversation has shifted a lot around artificial general intelligence and these larger existential kind of questions. And what really is exciting for me is kind of turning away from artificial general intelligence and AGI, and instead looking at the very real current challenges facing our world today. I think it's a privilege to be able to think about AGI and larger scale, long-term kind of things, but it's really a matter of real people and their quality of life. And it's like a life or death situation for so many people across the world, with challenges like human rights, war, the climate crisis. These are real challenges. And so in terms of positive impact, what's exciting is looking at how AI can be used to tackle some of the world's greatest challenges. Whether some of my work interning at NASA was working on Earth orbiting satellites that look at Earth's most vulnerable areas, and specifically looking at things like emerging wildfires and oceanic oil spills. These are ways that we can use technology outside of large language models and generative AI that's actually tackling these problems at a root cause, and using technology in a kind of creative way, which is really exciting. And with so many challenges facing our world today, whether it's the conflict that we're seeing right now, playing out in front of our very eyes, how are ways in which we can use technology to actually protect people? Because ultimately, for me, as an AI ethicist and looking at the intersection of technology and society, it really boils down to how can we help human beings, which is something that I'm very excited about. In terms of negative, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this could go wrong. We're at a really critical inflection point when it comes to technology, and whether it's things like large-scale surveillance or automating war, or things like this are also very real challenges, and it's extremely important for us to have diverse voices in these decision-making tables when it comes to the ethics of AI, who is using technology, who's developing technology, and often the concept of winners and losers, of who is actually benefiting from the tech that we're developing, is often really unclear when we're first developing it. So it's really important for us to make sure that we're completely aware of where is the direction of AI development headed, and we can't lose sight of that. That's something that's really important to me. And then you said the last question was, in 100 years, what would be the coolest thing that I would be very excited about if AI developed or created a solution to? I would say the climate crisis. I think it's currently one of the biggest existential threats to our humanity, and I think it's really important for us to be able to leverage technology in tackling a lot of the challenges that we're seeing. It is also important to note that running AI algorithms has a huge environmental impact, with keeping servers up and having really advanced and high-end supercomputers running. It takes a lot of cooling power, which takes a lot of water and a lot of electricity, which is not good for the environment as well. So I think being very mindful about when we're using AI for specific purposes, but really it's impactful in terms of helping companies cut down on their fossil fuels and be able to phase out and have like more of a just transition. So that's something that I'm very excited about. But I think the future of AI has the potential to go in such a positive direction. So I think it's exciting for all of us young people to have a place in that conversation.
Thank you so much. That's an awesome point that you brought up at the very end, which is that AI also contributes to global warming and the climate crisis. So I guess it's really interesting, because the people who would run it would have to then calculate, what's the probability that AI is able to find a solution a climate solution to offset the climate cost of running it. So
absolutely, it's like a give and take, which is really interesting.
Yeah. All right. So my next question is going to go back to Lolita. So Lolita, you have an extensive history with open source, running the open source network. And so my question for you is, why are open source technologies so important? And should the base code behind tools like ChatGPT or other artificial intelligence tools also be made open source? And what are the potential dangers of making them open source?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of open source is that it's around the entire innovation and invention happens in front of your eyes. That's what I admire the most about open source development, because nobody actually owns that. It's actually people commit and come in with the open-mindedness of doing actual social good by developing software in the open and making it available to anybody that has a dream of using it for whatever purpose. So the best part about open source is it brings about technology equitability in the market. Nobody who's sitting in some corner in the world, in some continent where they don't have access, should be deprived because they have to now pay for proprietary software. So the whole point here is technology has to be available just like food, water. We are currently living in a technology world, and depriving some continents and some people because it's not available to them is absolutely unfair. So this goes back to my theory on, diversity and inclusivity that applies just as much to making technology available. So one of the fundamental reasons why I'm passionate about open source is you can see the innovation and iteration happening right in front of your eyes in the open. You can actually say what goes into the code, what doesn't go into the code. There's no hiding behind defects and bugs, and you can call it what it is. And anybody in the world can globally, there's about 3 million open source developers, okay? And so it's not a big number compared to, where I would like it to be, because open source needs to be sustainable for generations to come. So, so from an overall culture and innovation, it's phenomenal. If you just think about the Linux Foundation, if you think about Red Hat, if you think about Python, almost everybody here knows Python. All of these are open source software that came about from open innovation. So one of the beauties of that is that, and it's because it makes it available to people, it becomes easy. You have an ecosystem where you get help. If you don't know what to do or you're stuck, you can reach out to the open source ecosystem, and I can tell you whether that's a developer or a contributor or a maintainer, they'll be more than happy to help you. And regardless of what area you're stuck with, whether that's Python or you're using TensorFlow or you're using PyTorch. So and I'll also add and give you a little bit more. There's actually two kinds of open source. When people talk about open source, they may or may not know. One is completely community-based open source. This is the kind of open source where you don't have to have a corporate job in order to have leadership. There's actually leadership positions available as maintainers, and these are volunteer positions, So people actually step up to that challenge and get that skill set. And they have leadership roles even within community-based. And our community-based open source is the one that gets the most amount of grants. All of university, academia, people who are passionate about technology innovation in the open are all people that you get from community-based. Then there's the corporate-based. Corporate-based open source is something, the best example I can give you today, which is so hot in the market for high-performance, multi-parallel threaded processing, is PyTorch. It's the fastest one that's used, and it's co-created between open source and Meta, actually. So we co-create that, and what does Meta have to do with this? It's a enterprise, right? It's a corporate. But the whole thought process now that's happening is when Microsoft bought GitHub, GitHub is open source. Microsoft is a corporate. When IBM bought Red Hat, it was $34 billion IBM paid for that mortgage. But why? The same thing. It's the idea is, and Meta is now co-developing PyTorch, which is the fastest processing, multiprocessing. All supercomputers use PyTorch and Ignite today. Mm-hmm. So the whole mindset is now changing in the world. Corporates are realizing the power of open source and the importance of having to do this development. So from that perspective, it's super important. Now with OpenAI and ChatGPT, the second part to your question that was pretty loaded, is those APIs are actually all open source and based on Python libraries. If you tear everything down, you will go deep down. You will see they're all grown up from Python libraries, from NumFocus, from NumPy, from other libraries. So some of it needs to be very important for us as we start releasing this into the open. Anybody can use it, which is all the positives I mentioned. It's like in life, whatever is good can also become bad. So what we need to have is explainable AI. Can an AI model explain your action to me? So I'm convinced that it is for the right reason. There's no bias in it. It's ethically correct. So there is all those little bit of, checks and balances that we need to build before you release these. That's why there's a lot of conversation happening in Congress today about what did you release with OpenAI? What about ChatGPT? What's the data like? And we do have to put some guardrails around it because we can just let it out without making sure, because otherwise, things could go wrong quickly.
So do you think right now OpenAI is in a place where it's unsafe to be released publicly?
I think it is, it depends upon your use case. If you're working on cybersecurity, would I tell you go and use these APIs right now to go build your business? Perhaps not. I am not fully convinced the security, all the checks and balances are in place yet in terms of have we tested it well enough? Is it going to make my software stack vulnerable? I don't know yet, right? So it depends on your use case. And if you want to use it in healthcare, can I just plug it in and use that for actual patient data that's going to flow through? Can I use it for currency exchange to run global markets, the financial check or the stock market, or for equity analysis and report, companies to street data, right, to Wall Street? Perhaps not. I wouldn't go that far, right? But it depends on where you want to use it. If you want to use that as a small platform, you're developing something, and then you have your own cover testing, whether that's regression, system, performance, vulnerability testing, then yes. So it would depend upon what you are using it for, and you have to have caution. No, I mean that's just the basic of any powerful technology. You just have to make sure that you have done your due diligence as well.
All right, thank you so much. My next question I'm going to direct towards Aura. So Aura is the CEO of a company called Black Unicorn Education. So Aura, where do you see the most inequality with regards to access to AI and its effects? And what do you think are the most effective strategies that you personally have used or other people can use to combat this inequality?
Thank you for the question. So as far as the most inequality that I see, and I travel all around the country, mainly in the US, is for certain communities, especially Black communities, Hispanic communities is where I'm normally going, is just awareness and exposure to information about AI. So it might be assumed that, oh, everyone knows about AI, of course, everyone, in the world must have heard about ChatGPT. However, that is not the case. Research has come out, and one of the stats that really drives the work that I do since I found out about it is that specifically in the US, 51% of women have not heard anything at all about ChatGPT compared to men, which seems like that can't be true. But the same goes for Black people. 51% of Black people, 47% of Hispanics have heard nothing at all. And as I travel around and talk to people about AI, I have found that to be true. So when I say, oh yeah, you could use ChatGPT to do these things, people are like, what's that? And so that just shows that obviously the education, AI education, is not broadly being distributed. Lots of times AI is being taught in computer science classes, but the problem with that is only 47% of high schools here in the US at least have foundational computer science courses. So that means there's 53% of schools that don't have that opportunity for students to learn about it. So a lot of times this AI education is trapped within the silos of computer science. So what my company does is I'm taking it out of that silo and I'm actually going into the communities. So I have a saying, I have a lot of sayings, but one of my sayings is availability does not equal accessibility. So you have a lot of these universities or programs that say, oh, we're making AI accessible to all, it's for everyone. Everyone can, can come and get this, but it's actually not accessible because there are a lot of barriers that certain groups would have to jump over or face. Say you're holding a program on a university campus. You might think like, oh, that's great. But for lots of people, certain groups, transportation is a problem. So they're not going to be able to come to your program. So while it is open to everyone, it's available, but it's not accessible. And I find the same thing to be true with just the way AI is taught. So the reason why my company, one of the underlying reasons why my company is called AI Education, the tagline is tech education done differently. So I have discovered that there's like this gap between someone who might know nothing at all about AI, but they're curious, they want to learn, and what are these so-called, beginner and introductory courses. And there's a lot of assumptions embedded in those courses that, you've heard of certain things, you're familiar with certain things, certain models, certain metaphors, but that's just not the case. So I take a different approach, going to where, people are, going into their communities. They don't have to come to me. So I'm going into the community centers, I might go to churches, just wherever the people are at, and making it relevant to their context. And so I like to say that, who creates curriculum matters. So I think we need to have more diverse people making curricula, because a lot of AI education is made by computer scientists, academics at universities. Very few, like I myself, even though I'm a nuclear physicist by training, I have also taught in, the public school systems. And so I have been an educator. So if I build something, it's going to look very different than, say what a university professor. So what I build is, I feel accessible because people can get their hands around it. They can use it. They can understand it. So I think those are some of the things that I have found that have been effective strategies, like just taking different approaches. It doesn't have to be pre-test, post-test, taught the way you see in schools all the time. There's some more informal ways, like playing games, having conversations. Like I said, you said earlier, I started on social media. So I started off doing TikToks, and I was getting lots of views and people following. So just going where people are, explaining it the way they do, and then building a bridge to where you want them to be.
Yeah. And I guess a follow-up to that is, do you think that, in some looking into the future, some of the techniques that you use could be implemented maybe at the high school or the college level, like within institutions?
Yeah. So in 2020, I actually helped co-found a nonprofit called the AI Education Project. And that's where I built my first AI curricula, which ended up reaching, in just a year and a half, we reached 30,000 students in 9 states and 15 countries. So the techniques that were used in that was during the lockdown and the pandemic. We saw students showing up every day, but they were, kind of not showing up for their actual required courses like English and math. So principals were asking, like, hey, what are you doing that students are showing up? And so we actually had a school district that modeled, how to build just coursework based off of what we were doing. So I think as we go forward, if we really do want to, promote tech equity, AI education equity, we're going to have to find some different ways, because if it's not working, we can't continue to do it. So I'm seeing it happen right now. I work with a lot of community-based partners, community colleges, universities, and they are open to doing things differently.
Thank you so much. And then my next question is going to go to Neha. So given that you're currently a student, and you're a member of like the Gen Z generation, how do you believe that fellow students, teenagers, and young learners can most effectively harness and influence the various capabilities of AI in our advantage?
That's a great question. So in terms of, there's many answers and many different perspectives on this question. But in my perspective, I believe that AI shouldn't replace education, but really can be something that goes along with it and kind of supports education. In terms of ways that students can use AI, I recommend, I think like taking a step back from AI, I think what really makes us human is our ability to make hypotheses and have an imagination and think of crazy ideas that are often false and not completely accurate, but are based on, our experiences and our background information and our context. And a big part of it is expressing ourselves creatively. So I think when a lot of kids are excited that they can use ChatGPT to do their homework for them or write their essay. But I think for me, looking at ChatGPT and other large language models and just generative AI as a whole, I think what's exciting is actually supporting your own ability to think critically and your own, I guess, journey in education, rather than replacing your ability to think and instead making you a really, really good prompt engineer typer. So I think what's exciting then is seeing how we can start using AI to really start equalizing some really historic educational gaps. I think I was reading somewhere that like very upper class schools in New York City have begun adopting artificial intelligence and incorporating it and encouraging students to use it as part of the curriculum, whereas Title I schools are completely flat out banning it. And so what's worrying me in that situation is seeing, it's dangerous to have a future generation where there's a gap, a wealth gap, where students who went to underfunded schools don't know anything about AI, let alone how to use it or what tools are out there, versus, students from more well-funded schools are completely well-versed in that. So I think what's exciting then is saying, okay, how can we use large language models to create personalized study plans or act as a tutor in helping you expand your own knowledge? I think that's very, very exciting for me, especially for kids. And coming from a very large public school in Pennsylvania, I know what it's like to feel like you don't have the resources to learn more about a field that you're excited about. And so I think this is a great way to bridge that. But also it's important to make sure that we're not erasing the one thing that's really fundamental to being human. So those are my 2 cents on it.
All right. Thank you so much. And then should we move into the Q&A panel? I think we're moving into the audience Q&A section now.
Right. Okay, so I think we've already had a couple of questions, so I think we can start getting into our audience Q&A. So Katrina asked earlier in the town hall, does AI mean that some people will lose their jobs because machines are capable of doing the same thing? And so I would like to pose that question to all 3 of our panelists, if they will pull up. And I think that's a very intriguing question. So, Ms. Aura, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, the way I look at it is that we're all going to keep our jobs, so it's not just total replacement, but the way we do our jobs will change. And I like to look at it as AI will take over certain job tasks. And so there are certain things like, filing papers, or a lot of companies now are using chatbots for customer service, to answer questions and kind of as the first front for answering customers. So I believe it will be a lot of tasks. Some people think it's just the lower paying jobs, the lower wage jobs, blue collar, but it's actually going to, it is impacting every single job across all sectors, whether it's fashion, firefighting, like even in fast food now, you'll see there are, for instance, what is it called? Chipotle. They're piloting right now with something called Avobot. So it's a robot that's, making the guacamole. There's another one called Chippy. Chippy is making the chips. So that frees up, which that might be a mundane, task for someone to do. But as far as the fear of, hey, the robot overlords are going to just come push us out of the way and we're going to be standing there doing nothing and they're, taking over our lives. That just will not happen. But it will and is taking over those rote, repetitive, mundane tasks. And then the other thing I just want to say is, but we can also within our jobs reimagine some of the tasks so we can use AI as a tool to be, to turbo boost our imagination and be more creative in the ways that we do our jobs.
That's great insight. I mean, I never would have thought of it like that. And so thank you so much for sharing that. I would like to pose that question to our other two panelists, either Dr. Lolita or Neha. There we go. Hi, Dr. Lolita. What do you think about Katrina's question?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, some jobs will get replaced. Okay, that's just how it's going to happen. And I will give you three examples, and if you reflect on those, you will see the logic. So first there were laptops, then came cell phones and tablets, right? iPad came along, your Samsung tablets came along. Then what did people say? Everybody said, oh my gosh, nobody's going to ever buy a laptop again in their life. Nobody's going to buy a desktop computer again in their life. But did that happen actually? No. The laptop market is just as strong and steady, producing great revenue for Dell, for HP, for Lenovo, right? That business didn't sink, it's not gone. But along with that, all your Apple, Samsung, Huawei, I mean, every other company, has started to building more and more cell phones. So the point is, when new technology comes in and there's disruption, the immediate thought is, oh, it's going to put something else it's going to go into extinction, and then the new stuff will come. The other two examples also I'll give you. When Uber came, pretty much every cab driver in the entire country said, you know what, I'm doomed. I've got to sell my cab. Nobody's ever going to get a taxi because Uber is there. But go to Vegas, go to New York City, I still call a cab because sometimes I don't get Uber. People like choices. So it would be wrong to think just because an aggregator technology like Uber came along, taxi business is gone. Taxi business is not gone. It's still thriving pretty well, but it's modified because now they work together. Sometimes the cab person is actually an Uber driver. Sometimes Uber people are taxi drivers, right? So it didn't go away, right? Those jobs both exist. Same thing with Airbnb. Has every hotel in all of the world gone away because now people only do Airbnb? Absolutely not. I just came back from Dubai. I stayed at the Fairmont. I didn't stay at an Airbnb. So the question is, it disrupted the industry, the overall hotel industry. It disrupts the hospital industry, the medical industry. It will disrupt the financial industry. It will disrupt oil and gas. It will disrupt education, which is what good tech is supposed to do, is create disruption, create the next level of innovation. So I would say, think through these examples, because all I'm trying to highlight is they have actually created 2x or 3x more jobs now. Because now Uber model is going, creating more Uber drivers who want to be self-employed. Then you have taxi drivers too, that's also growing. So I think that's actually created more jobs, more employment, more opportunities for people, no? So I think that's the way to look at it is, yes, some of the mundane jobs might get automated, like serving drinks at the restaurant, things like that. But it's also creating more opportunities because now you're going to need somebody to manage the tech. You're going to need somebody to manage the entire IT infrastructure and the background that is needed to run that. So I would say, you might want to just flip the coin a little bit and think, all this disruptive technology that's come in the last 5 years, has it actually created more jobs or has it taken away jobs?
Wow, thank you so much for being real with us, Dr. Lolita. I feel like my whole life has been changed after hearing that advice. So thank you so much for that. I would like to again pose that question to our last panelist, Neha Shukla. What are your thoughts on Katrina's question?
That is a great question. I have thoughts on this. The first one is around our power as consumers. We've been seeing the rise. I know on social media, I've been seeing a lot of AI generated posts and AI generated images and all of this. People are writing articles using AI. There, a lot of automation going on. And us as consumers, whether it's AI generated social media content or AI generated goods and services that we're interacting with, it's our choice as consumers to really shape the way that jobs go in terms of, okay, I won't like social media posts that are generated by AI, or I won't purchase products that are generated by AI because I want profits to go to the people who created them. So it's really like up to us in terms of, the myth is always like, oh, AI is going to replace only blue collar jobs, and us white collar employees will be safe. And with a lot of large language models growing and becoming very prominent, it's clear that no, also people at all levels will be affected. So it's our responsibility, and I think some of the other panelists mentioned, like, we have the choice, and it's exciting to see that in terms of how we want to shape the way that profits get split up. But on an exciting note, AI will definitely replace some jobs and change the way that some jobs are structured. But also what's exciting is seeing a whole new world of careers opening up. And so whether it's things like being a chief AI ethics officer, or looking at AI ethics and discrimination, or looking at AI and trustworthiness and safety and transparency, privacy. There are so many new fields opening up within AI, and those are not even the most technical ones. And you've got software engineers, people doing deployment, people doing testing and training data. There's so many new pathways opening up, which is really, really exciting. And even in my own career, I'm thinking that a lot of the jobs that I look forward to doing as I'm older are jobs that haven't even been created yet. So that's one thing that really, gives me excitement and hope for the future, is there's so much more to come that we just cannot even imagine. And it can be really, really great if we come together, collaborate on what we want that future to look like, and go, full steam ahead in terms of building that.
Wow, I love that you played devil's advocate there. You kind of hit us with a it's up to you, and then you were like, but on the bright side. So I really, really like that response. Okay, we have another question coming in from Raquel O. I hope I'm saying your name right. And she said, how can one navigate upholding originality in a world where AI is increasingly prevalent in academic and creative endeavors? And what strategies or ethical considerations can help in achieving this? So I would like to turn this over to Miss Aura Tanner, wherever she is. Yes. And what are your thoughts on Raquel O's question?
Let me see if I can. Upholding originality, where AI is increasingly prevalent in academic and creative endeavors. My personal opinion on that is that whatever it is you have, it cannot be duplicated. Like, I am doing AI education. There are literally, AI tools that you type in a prompt, it creates an entire course, like within seconds. But it can't duplicate, the interactions I have, like when I'm going out and doing workshops. As far as AI goes, it's still humans that have to feed it the data, that decide how it gets trained. So it's not coming up with any original thought. It can take things, and I like to say it's remixing it. So all of the, the lawsuits that we see against OpenAI and ChatGPT, because, it's, taking people's books, or DALL-E 2, taking people's artwork and then remixing it. The AI didn't come up with those original artworks, or it wasn't the original authorship of it. It can only remix what's already there. And so I know they have been playing around with certain things, like, hey, I know the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, just made their first purchase of AI generated art and brought it in. And there's a lot of controversy around that. Like, is it art? Lots of artists think, hey, this is nothing special. Other people see it differently. So I just think the era we're in, kind of like some of the other panels were saying, is like an exciting one. But I personally just think there's just an underlying human spirit to something that's made by humans, that just can't be duplicated. I know people can be tricked, like, was this made by AI? Wasn't it? But I just think when you put your heart and your soul into something, your perspectives, your experiences, all of those things get embedded into that thing. And there are lots of reports about that, especially some of the things that are written. Editors and things are like, oh, this is horrible. It's not that great. It's not that good. Even some emails and texts, people are like, hey, I know I've done it. Like, I think they used AI to make this. Like, you get suspicious. I don't know if that's happened with anyone else. But I just personally think humans don't, like, if it's you put it out in the world and you don't worry about competition from AI.
That's very reassuring. Thank you, Zora Tanner. Okay, heading that question over to Dr. Lolita. What are your thoughts on Raquel O's question, and
Yeah.
would you like to elaborate upon that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. And I will tell you that what's currently happening is our intellectual property laws that were created 60, 70 years ago are starting to become invalid today because AI is now creating content, it's playing in the creatives space, which is where innovation was coming, and there were intellectual property rights through our USPTO office, where we would file our patents and protect, publications and patents and have citations. Now, so there is a lot of conversation that's currently happening, and part of some of that, where policymakers are revisiting what is it that you can actually patent and how do you hold AI accountable? So, for example, if a company infringes on a patent that I own, I can file a lawsuit, right? But if you are actually an AI generated content creation bot, what am I going to get if I sue you? Nothing. So it goes back to 8 years ago when autonomous self-driving cars started showing up in Bay Area. There was the biggest amount of law changes that had to come in for insurance companies. So if one car hits another car, the two people sort it out today, human to human, by going and saying you owe me money or you pay for my damages, right? But what happens when you have a self-driving car, you're a poor passenger sitting in the back and they go and get into a collision? That created very ethical questions. Who is at fault? If there's no driver in the car, who do you hold accountable? The vehicle? So what happened was that led to very strong conversations where, in order to support autonomous driving, they came back with some new policies and things so that the insurance is somehow compensated. Poor guys. They're like, well, it's no fault of mine now, what do I do? So I think the same thing is going to happen now with AI for content. So the originality, that term is so important that you used, because today that's a big question on the table, is what laws and ethics and policies are we going to have in place? And I think you've seen a lot of conversation from President Biden's office, where he's invited some of the AI leaders to come in and commit that whatever the technology that they're going to create is actually going to have some level of explainable AI. We're talking use cases that are very small here, but our Department of Defense, DARPA, those kind of people who are using AI now with mission critical applications are now thinking very seriously about what originality means. And we have to make sure they have to have no bias, that they are actually ethical models, and also neurodiverse, right? There's a very good big population of people that are coming in who learn differently. So in order to accommodate all of that and their originality, how do you protect that? So there's a lot of conversations happening in our different networks and communities, but those are the things that I will share. I will be able to tell you there are people thinking about it in ways by which, just like the autonomous driving I was telling you, now we have insurance policies in place, so somebody is held accountable for a collision. So the same thing will happen with our models as well.
Great,
I hope
great.
that was helpful. Yeah.
Yes, great examples. Okay, to our last panelist, Neha, answering our very last question of the night. What are your thoughts on Raquel O's question?
Firstly, I love this question, and thank you so much for asking it. Just seeing that young people are thinking critically about originality, ethics, what is the role of human beings in the development of AI and the usage of AI in society makes me really happy. I think to the person who asked this question, please continue questioning the way that things are, asking questions, challenging assumptions. This is the way that we're really able to push for larger social change, and also not just submit to whatever we're seeing online and what's what trends that are going on, or the latest and greatest technologies that are being released, because it is our responsibility and honestly our opportunity to be able to use massive moments like the growth and release of ChatGPT for us to understand these questions. So first of all, love that question. Strategies in terms of strategies or ethical considerations in helping achieve this. One strategy that I recommend is being honest and open with yourself and kind of figuring out what is your own personal code of ethics when it comes to AI. Everybody has different perspectives on this, and I really respect the different positions that come with this discussion. But for me, it's thinking, okay, when will in what capacity will I use like large language models? In what ways will I use it to support my originality and creativity on the back end in terms of my learning? And in what ways am I going to be completely authentic and write from the heart, write my own text by myself? And so kind of drawing that line and being very clear with yourself is very helpful, because as I think Aura was mentioning, that you can tell sometimes when people write things with AI, and what's dangerous and what can happen in the future is when AI becomes really good, and when it becomes extremely difficult to differentiate between what is AI generated, what isn't. And then that incentivizes people to just say, well, you can't really tell if I wrote it anyways. Everybody's using it at this point. There's no point for me to write it myself. And so we need to make sure that we're proactively taking steps to make sure that human text and human creativity is something that we're preserving. The concept of imagination and creativity is something that we're preserving. And there are so many incredible use cases and scenarios where AI, whether it's generative AI or processing massive amounts of data or looking at all of these different types of algorithms, where it can be useful and where it can save a lot of time, where it can actually support jobs and support the growth of solutions to global challenges. And then there's places where we might be taking ourselves backwards in terms of bringing our human capabilities down. So it's really great that you're asking this question. I think what makes me excited about Gen Z the most is seeing how we're so unafraid to be bold and to, ask questions that can be scary to ask sometimes, but these are really, really important conversations to have. So thank you so much for asking that question.
That is a great way to wrap up all of our questions. Thank you so much, Neha and Ms. Aura and Dr. Lolita. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to them on their social medias, which are tagged at NGC Project on Instagram and Facebook. Not me plugging us, but I am. Please find us there. Also look in the comments for our store, and I'm going to turn it over to Candid to close us off.
Yes, and thank you, Melissa, and I agree with you. This is such a great panel. And thank you to our moderator, Sandra, and also to you, Melissa, as well, and to the entire Youth Advisory Board, because all you ladies worked really hard on this town hall meeting, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So if you enjoyed this event, consider supporting the work of the National Girls Collaborative. We will put 2 links in the chat for anyone interested in supporting. Lastly, please take a few moments to complete our post survey. It really helps us in planning future events. We'll pop that link in the chat as well. Once again, thank you all for attending our Youth Advisory Town Hall meeting. We hope to see you at the next event. Take care.